Hi, this is DIY Just from DIYNexus. Today we're going to be doing a video on the disassembly, cleaning, inspection, repair, re-greasing, and reassembly of a Craftsman ratchet. The ratchet we're going to talk about today is a 3/8 inch drive, fully polished, USA made, model number VW-44995. This is produced in the early 2000s, and actually this is my own personal ratchet that I bought in open stock from Sears back then. You can see it's pretty much used, and actually if you look at this end, it's slightly bent. Some of these rings and stuff in here are bent, and there's a lot of play. I don't know if you can see that. A lot of play going on in the head itself, so we're going to look into that when we look at it today. Here are the items we're going to use today. They're also in the description below. Here's the ratchet itself, the circlip pliers. They're also Craftsman, model number 47412. And I have a tip for you here. This is something I did some research on, and it looks like these pliers are also made by Channel Lock, or vice versa. Channel Lock makes them for Craftsman. The neat part about this is that the Craftsman version is about $32 on Amazon, but the Channel Lock version, which is model number 927, is $25 on Amazon. So I'll have a link below for the Channel Lock versions if you're interested in getting some. They have interchangeable tips down here with this little set screw, and this lever reverses their function, so pulling outward to pushing inward. A couple sets of needle nose, as we used for straightening and pulling things apart. Some penetrating lube and cleaner, PB blaster, which you'll use if you're going to unstick frozen parts. White lithium grease for a little bit more permanent fixed lubricant, and lastly super lube, synthetic grease to put in the ratchet. If you use the links below to purchase any of the items, you'll support us and we appreciate it. So the first thing we need to go to is the disassembly. To get this apart, we're going to have to use some snap ring pliers, and this is the set that I use and they work excellent. I've been very happy with them since I've had them. So we need to take these, get into this snap ring. You want to be a little bit careful with this because it could spring out here and you don't want to go shooting across the room or shoot you in the face. Pull the snap ring out and set it aside. Now that you have it out, all you really have to do to get this apart is lift up on the center section, straight up, and pull it out. This piece here has a plate, put that aside, and the actual ratchet part itself. Put that aside. Alright, the next parts here are going to be the actual little pawl, and if you notice how this is in there, you want to make sure that it's reinstalled in the same orientation. So we're going to pull the little pawl out. It's very small. And then you can see there's a pin down at the bottom, and we're going to pull that pin out. In fact, I'm going to use some small pliers to do that. On the back of the pin is a small spring. So you don't want to lose this. It could go flying. Last thing to pull out is the lever. So I'm going to just grab it from the back side and kind of pull it and push it at the same time and tip it out. Set that down. That's it. It's all disassembled. So once you're done with that, you're going to want to clean it all, because all the dirty parts, you can't tell if there's any problems with it, and you want to get all that old grease off anyway. It's probably been contaminated for when we put the new grease on. So I'd suggest you use your favorite cleaner to clean it. In my case, I might use brake clean. I've seen folks soak that in kerosene or in diesel fuel. Even some water-based cleaners would work fine. So when we come back, we'll have nice clean parts. Okay, we're back with all freshly cleaned pieces. Of note, when you're cleaning this piece specifically, the ratchet piece, I didn't see when we originally disassembled it because everything was so dirty, but you can see on one side here there's a little reddish orange O-ring, and on the other side it's not here because when I was cleaning it, it fell off. This isn't a problem, but you want to be careful of it. When we go to reassemble it, we'll stick it back in place with some lube, along with making sure this one's good. And on this little selector switch, there's also one in there. One thing of note, when you're done cleaning this part, make sure you clean where the button is here and where the little ball is here. Later on, we'll talk about lubricating this, but it's often overlooked. Now that everything's clean, we have to inspect each item. This is an important step because this will be where you find parts that are broken or that need to be replaced. On the main handle, there's not too much that can go wrong with this other than obviously it being physically broken on the exterior, but on the inside here where all the components sit, you want to look at it carefully and make sure there's nothing gouged or totally worn or, out of spec, obviously out of round or out of spec. In this case, it looks fine. On this specific ratchet at the beginning, we noticed that it was a little bit loose. And you can see here that this circlip is not flat. This is actually supposed to be flat. So what we're going to have to do is either replace this or smash it flat again. It's always best to replace something like this, but if you don't have one handy, you should be able to smooth it out in a little bit. We'll show that. Same thing goes for this back plate. This plate is supposed to be flat, and it's not at all. In fact, you can see here, it's been bent so hard against the circlip that it's left an indentation of the circlip's picture in it and a really sharp ridge. So we're going to have to flatten this out as well. The combination of flattening this and the circlip will probably bring back, make the head tighter again, which is a good thing. The little pawl. When you're looking at these, you want to look at the teeth and see that they're nice and clean. There aren't missing. There are no major problems with it, and that it's all physically intact. This one looks great. Selector switch. We talked about the small O-rings. This one has it. It's intact. And in general, it looks like it's in good shape. The chrome on the outside's a little bad, but that's not a problem. It'll be very functional for a while to come. The teeny tiny pin and spring. Now the pin is like not exactly totally sure. It might be metal, it might be plastic in this. They may be different for different versions of these ratchets. And the spring is a little metal spring. This pin gives you the tension on this selector lever here. So what you want to do is, if your selector lever is loose and floppy, you can actually take this spring and very carefully just stretch it out a teeny little bit. That'll put more tension on it and give you a more positive detent for your forward and reverse selector. Otherwise, don't touch it because it's probably in good shape and generally they don't need anything changed on them. So it goes together like that, and we'll put it aside. And then lastly, you want to check this gear very carefully to make sure there aren't any missing teeth. Nothing is rounded. In this case, we want to make sure that it has both of the O-rings, which it does, and they're both intact. And the ball detent works. When you push the button, the ball goes recessed, and when you let go, it comes back. And that the ball isn't missing. I've seen some of these where the ball's just gone, or if you turn it over and you push the button, it just falls out. But this one's in great shape. So that's it for inspection. If for some reason you find that this is destroyed or broken, or one of the other components that you can't just hammer flat are broken, you can always go to Sears and ask, in the case of Craftsman here, you can go to Sears and ask them for a rebuild kit. If you get a good person or a good clerk, they may be able to help you and get you one. Otherwise, they'll probably say, we don't offer that anymore, we'll replace it. And they'll replace it with a non-USA made, probably not even the same model number ratchet. So that's one of the reasons we want to be doing this and rebuilding these, because you can keep these good quality tools and use them for a long, long time if you do this type of maintenance. So we need to hammer this flat and do a little repair on this circlip. I brought it over to the anvil on my vise, and I'm just going to take your standard old hammer and try to smooth it out flat as I can get it within reason. Onto this piece. So we just hammered these two pieces and they're close but not perfect. So I'm going to take a couple sets of pliers and I'm going to straighten them a little bit further just to make sure they're as close as I can get them. This piece is spring steel, so you want to be careful you don't overbend it. You could possibly break it. But like I said, it's always better to replace these if you have the opportunity to. But in this case, we don't. Alright, we're on to the lubrication. So the first thing I'd like to do, because this often gets overlooked, is lubricate this guy. I like to use a type of penetrating lube, something like this. And what's going to happen is we're going to shoot it in here with some pressure into the back end. Push the button and shoot it in here and try to get it to just go through the whole thing. It might be a little bit messy. Push the button, get it to go through there. Actually, that did pretty well. And then on the other side, it's going to end up coming out this hole where the ball is. Now I can actually see it. So once you get a bunch through there and lubricate it pretty well, you can wipe it down, maybe push out the extra. Second O-ring came off. I'll have to clean that up real quick. Now that I've used the Seafoam penetrating lubricant and cleaner to clean inside here where the button is and where the ball is, I actually feel like it needs a little bit more lube than that, something that's a little more, a little thicker and going to stick around. So I'm going to use some spray white lithium grease. Same exact thing. Push the button down, spray it in the edge. Try to get it in there, push the buttons, let it soak down in a little bit further. And this stuff, as it dries, will create more of a grease, a longer lasting grease inside there. And then of course wipe up all the excess. Alright, that should take care of this. Looks like I've sprayed it all over the area that I'm trying to video as well, of course. Alright, so now we're going to grease the rest of the components. And there's a lot of debate on the internet what to use, and I like to use Super Lube. This stuff works great, and supposedly it's the stuff that Snap-on uses in their higher teeth count ratchets from the factory, which if they use it, it's probably pretty good. There's another couple items people use. Some people do use the white lithium grease. I think that's a little bit thin. Some people use assembly lube, which they call RLL. There are some accepted standards which say that if your ratchet is a fine tooth ratchet like this one, which is 60 teeth, you can use a thinner lube or even an oil. I'm not a big fan of oils because they run out and get all over everything. Lube stays in there more. If it's a thicker tooth ratchet, like an older Snap-on 24 tooth or the Craftsman 36s, etc., then a grease, even thicker than this, would probably work okay. This is a great in-between item. I have a link at the bottom in the description if you're interested in getting some. Works really well. So, you want to get a little bit of this on your finger. Take the base of the ratchet, and then, now I don't have a ton, I'm just going to go around the inside and coat the surfaces. While you're doing this, think about where the metal is going to touch metal in here and where those little O-rings are going to sit. You want to have it covered all in those places. Even in here where the selector is. A little more. On these smaller ratchets, especially if you're doing something smaller than this, you may need to use a Q-tip or toothpick or something along those lines to get it down in those small spots. If you have a little extra, that's okay. We're going to wipe it up at the end. So with that lubed, You're going to want to lube the rest of the components. The next item is going to be the selector switch. Go around the whole base of that and make sure you get that O-ring as well. Then the pawl and the small spring and detent holder. Some people say when they're done with this and they put it together that, oh, my ratchet is so quiet. I love it. It's quiet. I've made it better. Well, quiet doesn't necessarily mean better. Quiet means that there's grease taking up the space and these little teeth aren't going to engage as tightly. So what you want to do is just get enough of this on here that everything's lubricated well and it'll protect from corrosion. But you don't want to pack it in there so tight that it's blocking up the engagement of those teeth. Move on to this one. Remember, we have the O-ring groove here. I'm going to put some lube in that and we'll stick the O-rings back into it. And then on the teeth themselves. A little bit more. All right, now also I was saying, remember where the metal's going to touch. So this plate, the whole entire backside of this plate contacts everything in there while it's spinning. So we want to get that lubed up. So it's time for reassembly. We're going to do this in the reverse order, so we're going to put the selector switch in first. So you have to put it in at a little bit of an angle and then tip it and then push it in flush. Note that I didn't pinch the O-ring that's in there, and we're making sure it does swing back and forth acceptably, and that's good news. So on the back, next thing is this little teeny tiny spring and the selector arm here. There's a hole in the center, right in here, you can see. And this goes into that hole. Now I hope my big fingers can do this. If not, we can always use a needle nose, but I got it. The next item is the pawl, and when we took it apart, we made sure to say, put it back in the same orientation. And so I'm following that orientation, and I'm going to set it into place. We had the selector switch, in this case, set to the left, and I put that little bump in the groove there on the left. The next piece is the actual drive, but we need to be sure that we put the O-rings on it before we put it back in. I put a little grease on here, so I'm going to take the O-ring, set it into the grease, make sure it's in there right, and take number 2, put him in here, make sure it's in there right, and then set that down into the hole. You're going to see that as you put it in, you may want to tip it in this direction a little bit so that the teeth mate up with the pawl, and you kind of compress that spring a little bit when you push it in. There we go. If you've got it in there right, when you flip the lever, it should go from side to side, and actually you should be able to see the ratcheting motion. Both directions. Sounds pretty good. Alright, we're up to the plate. It was all bent in this case. I'm going to put this back on. Which direction? I want to put it back on the original direction, like this. Last piece is to put the circlip back in. Let's hope it goes in a little easier now that it's flat. My luck is it will go in harder. But you want to get it into the groove that's in the ratchet. So we'll take the circlip pliers again and give it a try. There we go. And you know it's in right if it's seated down in the groove here and on the opposite side. Because I'm picky, I'm going to center it. That's pretty good. Give it a test. Flip the switch. Push the buttons. Seems to work well. Lastly, I'm going to clean this thing up real quick and we'll finish this off. Now that it's all cleaned up, we're done. We've completed the assembly. It's back together correctly. Test it out. It's nice and smooth. Flip the switch. Smooth the other direction. Button works well, and you can see that the ball goes in and out when you push the button. No problem. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. Thanks for watching, and if you like what you've seen, please subscribe.